All right. Welcome back to BTI Live on Giving Tuesday. We are in our home stretch here, and by home stretch I mean another 4 hours. But we're going to stay on the air for 4 hours uninterrupted, moving on from this point. And I'm really excited to bring on a new guest, someone that has a science background but is not a scientist presently, but he's a huge supporter of BTI and a lot of things in our community. And his name's Ron Cooper, and he's right here. Ron, thanks for making time on your busy Giving Tuesday.
My pleasure.
I think you give every other day of the year, and you take Giving Tuesday off, right?
Well, no, Giving Tuesday is kind of an interesting idea. Now, how many Tuesdays do you have to give here?
I don't know.
So just one so far.
Yeah, so right? Giving Tuesday is it's a national movement.
Oh, is that right?
In support of nonprofits.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
so it started about 6 years ago or so, and everyone decided that after the gluttony of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, that we should give back to nonprofits.
Excellent idea.
And so we're here celebrating Giving Tuesday by celebrating BTI science and encouraging people, if they want to support BTI on Giving Tuesday, they can, much like Ron does all the time. We're not going to shake him down today. We're going to give him today off.
Well, I did bring a check.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe not. Maybe we will shake Ron down a little bit. So, Ron Cooper, you are pretty involved in the local Ithaca community, especially in the arts. I know you and your lovely wife, Shelley, are big fans of the arts and supporting the arts. So why would a guy like you then get involved with a place like BTI?
Well, my wife and I are farmers.
Okay.
For starters.
Have you always been a farmer?
No.
Okay. No, I knew that. We're transitioning here.
We retired, moved to Ithaca, and we've got about 100 acres up on South Hill, and 30 of them are fields. So we had to figure out what to do.
Oh, Stephanie's up there.
And let me tell you, farming is an on-the-job training sort of thing, man. It is actually a lot harder than you think.
We helped a little while
Absolutely.
ago. Helped.
Absolutely.
We got to pick some grapes.
Boy, all these wonderful volunteers from BTI came over and literally plucked the grapes on the vineyard. And it was just...
You didn't have to twist our arm.
Well, you ate a lot of grapes.
We ate a lot of grapes. Drank some of your homemade beer. That helps.
There you go. Yep. I thought about bringing something for you, but I forgot.
I mean, I'll stop by after the broadcast.
Oh, good. You should. You should. No, but I mean, arguably you get really close to the earth if you're a farmer.
Yeah.
And what BTI does is right in the center of that effort. Okay. So if you're ever trying to grow anything, we're hobby farmers. Okay. We don't make any money. We just plow money into it, as opposed to taking any out.
It's a one-way funnel
it's
of money.
It's a one-way street, man. One of the things you realize once you start doing that is your interaction with those plants and the weather and the soil and everything is actually a lot more difficult than you ever thought. But it's also a lot more satisfying than you ever thought, okay? Now, BTI arguably is right in the middle of all of that nexus. What it is striving to do is place the bricks in the wall to build the knowledge base to make plant security, food security, our whole world really secure in terms of this basic science that goes into developing and growing and harvesting plants. Now, we all eat plants. Everybody eats plants, okay? So if you want
maybe not as many as we should, but
well, I know you don't eat plants.
I do eat plants. Only plants.
Right. Well, there you go.
Occasional seafood, but that's only when nobody's looking.
Yeah, well, lobster here and there, right? Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, what single thing connects every human being on this planet? It's food, okay? And BTI is striving to make food an affordable, safe, quality, amazing phenomena on our earth. I mean, we have all these unsustainable practices right now in farming and growing food for the earth, and BTI not only attacks the sustainability of it, but the basic science of it. And you can't do anything in today's world. Arguably, our Western culture is a science-based culture.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons why we've been so enormously successful in wealth building, is because of our application of science to the things in our lives. And this is a basic science institute. But you mentioned the arts.
Mm-hmm.
This is a science institute that has a soul.
Yeah, we're proud of that soul.
Right now I'm looking at art on your wall.
Yeah, the camera might not be able to see it, but there is art all around us.
You do a show every year.
Sometimes twice.
Sometimes twice.
Yeah.
I've at least been to one a year. And, I mean, think about that. How many places do you know that are science places have a relationship to the arts? And so that makes you stand out, arguably, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, some of the support that you have in this small, compact institution is some of the world-class scientists in your field, in their fields, that come here without getting paid a penny to contribute to the science that is being worked on here. And I think that, as an eleemosynary step, is just remarkable.
Yeah.
So these are some of the reasons I love BTI. Not only that, he gives me a ticket to the Masters, which is where he got this.
Right, yeah.
Every year.
I was one and done. You know, I peaked, I won my jacket, and then I
right.
retired into science communications.
That's right.
As every golfer does. But you have a bit of a background in connection to science. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I got it a little bit left-handedly. I was studying marine environments, marine biology, and this was back in the very early 70s, and polychlorinated biphenyls were a very popular chemical. It's an oil that was manufactured by Monsanto down in Alabama, and one of the problems industrially was that many of the oils that were in use were flammable. And so this is a problem when you're making a large transformer for a telephone pole.
Okay.
Because when those things short out, if you've ever seen one, it's like a light show.
Yeah.
And
I was actually by a transformer once as it got hit by lightning.
Yeah. I mean, those things will explode.
It was.
So here's this ideal molecular weight oil that they can put in those transformers that won't burn. And so it became a very, very popular industrial item for every kind of application in the world, from how you put carbon on carbon paper on, okay? Then they found out, unfortunately, for hundreds of people in Japan, they got neurotoxicity from it, okay? And that was the way they discovered its toxicity. Unfortunately, they didn't discover it before it was just ubiquitous in our environment. And so when I was studying, one of my instructors figured out how to quantify polychlorinated biphenyls in anything that you can extract them from. So quantification was a real problem because you didn't know how much was out there. You knew it was out there, you just didn't know what concentrations. So the metabolites of DDT in gas chromatography would come off in such large numbers that they would cover up the isomers of polychlorinated biphenyls. And therefore you couldn't quantify them.
Right.
Well, he figured out with a computer how to spread those out in the chromatography, and you could actually then quantify polychlorinated biphenyls, okay, in the environment. So he and I were two people on the planet that knew how to do that. So I switched from marine biology to pesticide scientist.
How many people make that transition?
I don't know. I don't recommend it for anybody, by the way.
But it sounds like it was an important thing to work on.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody was knocking at your door trying to get you to, help them quantify. And, once it gets out there in the publications, anybody can do it. It's not like it's complicated or anything.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a couple of years, and then we had a great big recession.
Which is always good for science, right?
Always great for science. Let's see, what are you doing again? We don't have any funds right now.
Right.
So, but for a couple of brief shining moments, I was a pesticide scientist.
And then you moved on to?
I went to dental school on the recommendation of an advisor my graduate school advisor because he couldn't get any jobs for his PhDs. And, you know, you're beavering away on a PhD, man, that can take some time. And, you know,
Ron, just be a dentist.
This is what he told me. He says, I can't find a job for my PhDs, but every time I go to my club, my dentist is playing tennis. So one of my old fraternity brothers' girlfriend's father was the dean of the dental school. I was in Atlanta at the CDC with this PCB thing, and so I went and called on him and became a dentist, and then an orthodontist, and then I did a maxillofacial orthodontic residency, and did that for about 10 years, and then became a business guy. So science is deep in the background.
Yeah, you've kind of done it all, though. What's life like at the CDC? You know, in the movies, that's always the post-apocalyptic population tries to find its way back to the CDC, right?
Everybody in hazmat suits and
right.
level 4, you know, labs and everything. No, actually, they have them there. You know, I mean, it's the real thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, the real thing. I mean, every nasty bug has ever been identified, they have them there, and they work with them. But this was their toxicology department that I was working in. I didn't have to have a hazmat suit. I had to have T-shirt and shorts. I mean, they're very informal there. These are the best and the brightest in their fields. Yeah. But they're very informal. Everybody goes by their first name. You know, it's just they're all Dr. somebody. Mm-hmm. But you know, they're not like that. It's a very nice culture.
So in your time being involved here with BTI, is there any kind of specific examples of research that when you're talking to people about BTIs, or something you kind of always go back to as some of your favorite examples?
Well, I did have one favorite. Actually, it's my wife's favorite.
Okay.
So we
Shelley's favorite.
Yeah, right.
Hi, Shelley, if you're watching.
We hosted the scientific advisory board one evening.
Right. Yep.
And the name fails me right now, but Shelley met the world's leading expert on ripening of tomatoes. It was on your board and may still be on your advisory board.
Okay.
And she was fascinated, and because you know you go and buy a tomato in the grocery store, it tastes like cardboard. Right. And there's a reason why it does. It's because those things are as green as your jacket when they pick them.
That's right.
You know? And then they gas them to turn them red. And so they don't have those naturally produced chemicals internally that actually really ripen and make more flavorful the tomato. It's a defense mechanism, okay? The bugs don't want to eat them until they're ripe, okay? Right. So they wait till the last 3 days before they start producing this chemical. And that ripens them and makes a much tastier tomato. So there you go. So where the rubber meets the road.
You like tasty tomatoes.
Hey, Shelley grows tons of tomatoes.
And you've told me though in your hobby farming though,
yep.
in your time with BTI, you've actually picked up some tips along the way regarding apples and some other things.
Oh yeah.
So if there's some home gardeners or other hobby farmers out there, what kind of tips have you picked up?
No, man, these are secrets.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, they're still under embargo.
Right. But you know, getting back to BTI, you know, this through a mutual friend is how I got involved with BTI. Mm-hmm. You know, BTI didn't seek me out, and I didn't seek BTI. I didn't even know it was here.
We're working on that.
So a friend of mine worked here, and she introduced me to BTI. And it was a great introduction. You know, one of the things that I've always believed, and I'm not unique in this, is that it's always about the management. Mm-hmm. I don't care whether it's a business, a country in South Africa, our country, or a farm, or an academic institution. It's always about the leadership. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I rapidly learned here, that BTI has just remarkable leadership for an institution of its size and importance. And that's the key to everything, is leadership. And people who have never been here before and visit the BTI always come away impressed. And I'm not making this up for your Giving Tuesday either. It's true. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy to come to BTI here. One, you realize that the people are really nice, brilliant, are working on the key structure of food security in the world, and they're led remarkably. So, what could you not like?
There's a lot to like. I'm biased, but I think there's a lot to like.
There is a lot to like.
And
So,
there's a lot of organizations that I know you and Shelley are involved in, BTI being one of them in terms of where you direct your philanthropy. When you talk to people, is the idea of giving to science something that the average person really thinks about? I know, just coming from the outside into BTI myself, having worked in fundraising, you don't think of science as needy or,
no.
people that are going to put their hand out. But you come to realize when you get more involved how crucial financial support is and how and from experience how up and down federal support can be.
Oh, yeah.
And so more and more science is turning to individual philanthropy. So, how do you explain that to people, and kind of what was the tipping point to make you feel like giving to science was a worthy investment?
Well, I think most people would think you were an alien if you said, gee, I give to science. They're thinking of Save the Children or something, right? Okay, so a basic science institute on the Cornell's campus is probably not something they think about right away. Okay?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And you are covered up a bit here, so it's a matter of getting the idea out there. But what I always tell people is go watch the PBS NewsHour, okay? And the roll-in on it is all of the large foundations that contribute to PBS in order to fund this public broadcasting system, okay? And we're talking everybody from the Pew Charitable Trust to the Ford Foundation, they're all in there, okay? All the big ones, okay? If you actually go to those foundations' websites and look at their mission statements, science and food and global food security is almost always buried somewhere in their hearts. So large foundations get it about funding science because they can't look at Bill Gates. You cannot move forward your agenda to eradicate malaria unless you fund science. And so there's a huge connection here. There's one leads to the other. So you can't leave the bedrock out and expect to have anything happen on whatever you're trying to accomplish in terms of, healthcare or food production or whatever. You've got to fund the science. But most people don't think about it, okay? They literally don't. We're a very giving country, probably the most giving country on a percentage basis in the world. Americans are very generous, and they give. And this is the season. That's why they have Giving Tuesday.
It's the day.
It's the day. It's Giving Tuesday. So, it's, but what you're effectively trying to do here is let the average person like myself understand that this is something very worthwhile to give for. Gifting to a basic science institute, especially one as personable as this. I mean, you have mascots and things here, and green jackets.
And plant ties.
Plant ties.
I haven't talked about this yet, but this was purchased for me down in Yonkers when we did the ribbon cutting on the old building back in May. Someone found this for me, so I wanted to make sure that I was festive.
You're a haberdasher, man. He's out there, let me tell you.
But I'm sorry, you interrupted.
I can't remember what I was talking about.
The support.
People don't think about gifting to basic science. And I think you should. I think you really should. We give to all kinds of little organizations, because we find it's more personable to do that, something you actually have a personal connection to. And the places and people we gift to are something that means something to us, and BTI has come to mean something to Shelley and I. And so we're happy to help out.
Well, you both certainly mean a lot to us.
Well, we make the beer for you.
It's good beer, and your wine is also very good. I will say the white wine.
Yeah.
What's the name of the
Stone Post?
Stone Post. That's right. It's very good. You're doing very good work on your hobby farm.
Thank you, Keith.
And if we all can continue to be the recipients of it, I hope you continue to find our knowledge here useful because it's working out great for me. I can't speak for everybody, but
Well, you know, I actually took a young grower, when we first moved here, I took a young growers course over in Geneva on vineyards.
okay.
And wineries. Winemaking, wine production, I guess is the right word. And, you know, Cornell has an outstanding program
Right,
in
yeah.
wine production. I mean, it's nationally famous. So one of the, when I was kind of on break, I was asking one of the instructors there, here's my property, what do you think? He goes, nah. This is way too cold and windy and doesn't drain worth a damn, soil's bad. Nah.
Don't grow a thing.
Well, don't grow vinifera
Don't
grapes.
grow grapes, right.
So, but we did a little bit of a workaround, and actually Cornell helped because they developed an experimental vine that is cold hardy, disease resistant, and has a very pleasing kind of base juice, kind of like a Sauvignon Blanc. So it worked out great.
Well, science again, helping
Science on the march, man. Let me
That's
tell
right.
you. Well, you know, there's definitely, if you make alcohol, and we do, we make hard cider, beer, and wine. It's all science. You know, I mean,
You're welcome.
and the still back here where
Yeah.
they make their.
What we should have done is we should have had you bring some of your product in. We could have done a little tasting here. I mean, only I would have benefited from it, but I would have.
Well, you'd be falling
I would have
asleep in your
described.
chair.
Yeah, I would have described it for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Well, gee, I should have.
Next time. Next Giving Tuesday, we'll do a taste test.
Giving Tuesday, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that I've got to ask you is, you know, if someone said, "Well, gee, that's not a bad idea," what forms of gifting and what are the kind of the amenities that go with it, and
Yeah.
you know, what is, you know, we give it, we don't care anything about the recognition of it. We care that it actually is put to work in a good way here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that BTI does, okay, that Shelley and I greatly appreciate, is we actually get to see the metrics of what you do here, okay, because you're very open about it, very positive about it. It's not like they're going out and buying, you know, buying fancy clothes.
No,
with your
this
gift.
is a hand-me-down. This is an absolute hand-me-down.
With your gift, they're actually putting it to work
Right.
in a very efficient and effective way. The scientists who work here, their compensation, if that's what you want to call it, is de minimis, you know, for what they do and the hours they put in and the actual brain power they apply to their field. And so, you know, this is a very well-run organization on the accounting side, and that means a lot. I'm sure that you can gift to some institutions and it's just vacuumed up into something you have no idea where it went, you know, whether it's the fancy handrails on the wall or whatever it is, you know, you just don't know. But here you do. It's small enough and compact enough that you actually know what you're gifting to here. And I think that's very important in terms of gifting to an institution. You know, it's not like you've just given money out into some giant, you know, pie somewhere. You're giving money to a compact, organized, small, dedicated, focused institution, which is a different thing. And that way you can get the feel back from what your gift means.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is always trying to convey that payoff, you know, because sometimes basic research, as you know, can take 5, 10, 15 years to really see the impact of that. But there's plenty of things in the short term to support as well. You know, just our whole education and outreach program is one thing that can be supported, and that goes to, you know, help make the next generation of scientists. So that's a whole nother aspect that we'll discuss as well.
Well, one thing that I think you should bring out is that BTI has a vision, okay? A vision that stretches over the horizon. You're not just content to keep the wheels turning here, you know. BTI actually has a vision of where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And that's important because it's an expansive, enlarging vision, which I think is very important. You know, you've got a hold of what you've got here, but you've got a larger, bigger mission.
Right, I had like a
in the plans, as it were. And you need more space, you need more labs, you need more greenhouses.
Yep, so that leads me to, I guess, probably my final question is, as someone that's been in science, you said going back to the 70s, and we're not trying to
Let's not dwell on that,
put a date you here, Ron, but how do you, when you look at the science landscape in terms of science's relationship with government, what does that look like to you right now?
Well, the problem with that is that what they give, they can also take away. And the unevenness in the funding of the government creates an enormous inefficiency. I probably shouldn't tell this story because it's a classic governmental story. So I'm out in the toxicology lab at the CDC, okay? And all of a sudden the director of the lab comes in and says, okay, everybody, we're going to have lunch together. We've only got a few hours to do this. So literally, in that afternoon, they had to spend $2 million.
In an afternoon?
In an afternoon. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't get the continuing funding. In other words, they only spent $1 million, they'd have $1 million less next year.
Right.
So, they had a perfectly good electron microscope, but they got a bigger, better one. And, so there is, that sort of bureaucratic funding that runs all the way through our government can create enormous inefficiencies, I think, in terms of actual governmental spending, not only in their own institutions as well as the ones that they outreach to, NIH, all those institutions. So it is, for instance, if you had an ongoing grant from a large foundation, it would be, if you were staying on mission, it would be a lot more secure than the governmental funding that you could possibly get, rather than these one-off grants that somehow you've struck some nerve in a tooth at the government to get some money out of them. And that unevenness, I think, is a detriment to what science can and should be doing. So, and of course, we don't ever give it enough. I mean, look, of all the cockamamie things that the government gives money to, science is sort of like on the end of this train.
Well, a lot of reports say it's been in terms of funding for science compared to the federal budget, it's been sliding ever since the late 70s, a downward slide. So, there's just a bit of a, that's why when we talk about science philanthropy, there's a reason behind it, because we're not able to just completely rely on Uncle Sam.
Well, that is the core of my story. Back in the 70s, they took away my student funding. The federal government stopped giving loans to graduate students at the time. And guess who didn't have any other money? So I had to go get a grant from the CDC, in order just to, to put the biscuits on the table.
Well, I personally feel it all worked out for you.
It did.
And I'm proud to know you, and BTI is proud to have a relationship with yourself and Shelley, and you've done wonders for us.
It's our pleasure, Keith.
No, it's really great. It really is to have an advocate just in our local community, like ourselves. As you said, a lot of people even locally, we're trying to get more people familiar with BTI. Of course. And to have strong advocates like yourself is essential.
Well, you're hidden under a bushel here, You're on this big Cornell campus, and you're just one more building,
One more building. And I might also add, regarding what Ron just said, we do not have a $2 million surplus here at BTI that we're out trying to spend. So while the CDC may have had that problem at one point, I don't think we've ever had that problem. So, problem in quotes, of course.
The BTI really is sort of a bright light bulb on the campus, I think, because it is as personal as I think any of the institutions here. It's got the scale and the size that it can be, but it is because that's part of its personality and of the institution.
Right.
And I think that carries forward. I don't know the exact precise history of the BTI, but it was basically a giant eleemosynary gift back over 100 years ago, right?
Yeah, but 92 years ago, almost 100 years ago,
92 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, William Boyce Thompson had this crazy idea that we should probably pay more attention to plants and created an institute to do that. So really, we talk about giving to science. Well, this institute is born out of philanthropy from someone that was not a scientist.
Right.
So
no, he wasn't a robber baron or anything, was he?
He was a mining magnate.
Well, so there.
Yeah.
Great.
It's okay. Yeah. Well, Ron Cooper, thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate it every time we get to chat. I know I could do it for a few more hours. But we have more guests coming up, including BTI President David Stern will be with us at 3 o'clock. And at 2:30, we'll be jumping to, we had to reschedule the 1:30 interview with former BTI President Charlie Arnson. So he'll be joining us remotely at 2:30. So we will be back shortly. Thank you again, Ron. And we talked a lot about philanthropy. If you're looking to learn more about those opportunities, btiscience.org/give is where you can go to learn more about all the different ways you can support science here at BTI. We will be right back in a few minutes. Thank you very much.